Chapter 25 Bloody Sunday Part 2 1 p.m. A cricket bat struck the heavy leather-bound ball with an ear-splitting crack, and it soared high into the air. "Look at that, man! What a shot!" shouted Simon as he danced a jig in celebration. "If you play like that this afternoon, Simon, lad, we should tan their arses," said Jensen as he watched Dippy gallop clumsily across the school playing fields in pursuit of the ball. Simon laid down his bat and walked over to Jensen. "Do you think Harry will actually show up this afternoon, dude?" "Now there's a question, Simon. I just don't know, mate. It seems we're not good enough for him nowadays. And even if he does show, will it really be him?" "Yeah, I know what you mean, man. He's just not the same person anymore. He seems to think he's one of Jesus' disciples." "Yeah, Judas." "Yeah, good one, Jensen." "Hey, but don't worry, Simon, because if he don't show, I've got it all covered." "What do you mean? We're already short of men, man." "Not now, we're not. I've sorted out a couple of ringers and a secret weapon." "Oh, wow. Like who and what, dude?" "Well, the ringers are the Anderson twins." "The Anderson twins? Is that fair, Jensen? Because they don't actually live on our estate." "No, granted, they don't. But they are within a bus ride, and more importantly, they're very good cricketers." Yes, they are. But who's a secret weapon then, dude?" Jensen pulled his face taut and nodded towards Dippy, who at last had reached the ball. He picked it up, turned and threw it all in the same movement, and promptly fell over. "Here he is," said Jensen confidently. "He's our secret weapon? But he's rubbish, man." "Exactly," smiled Jensen. "I still don't get it, dude." "Well, think about it, Simon. Dippy's front bottom end of the estate, is he not?" "Well, yeah." "So, technically, that makes him eligible for the opposition, does it not?" said Jensen as he crouched down to pick up the rolling ball that Dippy had eventually managed to throw back. "Yeah, I suppose it does, man. Technically." And then Simon cottoned on. "Hey, I get it. That's dishonest, Jensen, and extremely low, and most definitely very unsporting. It should work a treat. You're a devious but clever person, Jensen." "I'll take that as a compliment, Simon." "And so you should, dude. So you should." And instantly Simon felt lifted. He picked up the bat and swung it around and grimaced as he prepared to hit the ball again. "We're gonna win this time. I can feel it in my water, man." Jensen bowled good and hard and hit Simon in the groin. "Arr!" screamed Simon. "How's that? Right in the middle wicket," laughed Jensen. 2 p.m. For Harry Spider, the afternoon continued like a nightmare that he couldn't awaken from. The relentless questions probed ever deeper. What did he want to become when he left school? What were his prospects? Where did he see himself in 10 years' time? And all hiding the underlying question: what the hell makes you think you're good enough for my daughter? For every question answered, a comparison was made with Victoria's meticulously planned future, which was why Harry was losing so badly. He was just going to enjoy being young for a few more years, and a career was the last thing on his mind. But he couldn't tell Mrs. Simpkins that, because it seemed to Harry that being young was strictly off the menu in this house. He felt he was being made to feel inferior, and it was working. He needed a miracle. But miracles sometimes do happen. The front door suddenly burst open. It was the cute little girl dressed in riding gear.
"You'll never guess what, Mummy. I've forgotten my riding crop,"
moaned Victoria's little sister, and she frowned delicately.
"Oh, you are a silly darling,"
said Mrs. Simpkins, smiling proudly at her youngest offspring. Harry also smiled, but not for the same reasons. This was a secret mini-victory, for he'd had the good fortune to meet the girl earlier, and he knew she was prone to the odd four-letter word outburst. If only her mother knew that, and he smiled at the thought again.
"She'd forget her head if it wasn't screwed on, wouldn't you, Angelica? Oh, she is a little dear."
Angelica? What an inappropriate name, smirked Harry to himself. The little girl turned to her mother and frowned, not so delicately this time.
"Fecking hell, Mummy! Do you have to fecking go on at me all the fecking time? I'm not fecking 2 years old, am I?"
She then grabbed her riding crop and stormed out of the room with her customary catchphrase and two-fingered salute.
"Jesus fecking Christ on a fecking bike! Feck off!" Angelica, come back here now,"
shouted her mother. But it was too late. She'd already disappeared. Harry could scarcely believe his ears, and another embarrassing silence ensued. But this time it wasn't him who'd caused it, and he was more than a little relieved about that. Then Vicky nudged him.
"That's my little sister Angelica. I'm afraid she has behavioural problems. Mummy's trying to get her to see a child psychologist, but she hasn't managed it yet."
"Why? Is there a long waiting list?" asked Harry innocently.
"No, it's not that. We just can't get the little devil into the car."
Now Harry was no psychologist, but he reckoned he'd find a good cure for this one. All that spoiled little brat needed was a good kick up the arse, and that would be job sorted. Mrs. Simpkins sighed and climbed to her feet, and as she stood, she paused just long enough for the facade to drop. The shafts of sunlight that illuminated the room caught the side of her face and penetrated the makeup. The ingrained lines around her eyes, where life's traumas had left their indelible marks, were clearly visible. And for a brief moment, Harry almost felt sorry for her, because here was a woman who'd probably lived her entire life worrying about other people's opinions. And that never ends well, because you can never be good enough. In all the excitement, and with empty glass of brandy still in hand, Mr. Simpkins had fallen asleep. Mrs. Simpkins addressed him as though he were a naughty child.
"George, come and give me a hand with dinner, will you, please?"
He awoke, rubbed his eyes, hiccuped, and duly obeyed. "Yes, dear. Coming, dear." Vicky placed a hand on Harry's knee, and he flinched nervously.
"You're doing fine, Harry. If we keep up this behaviour, we'll get through this with no bother."
Harry was now becoming even more suspicious. It seemed to him that most of the Simpkins were reacting in one way or another against the strict regime that the mother of the family had imposed upon all of them. And he couldn't help wondering if he was to be the catalyst for Victoria's reaction. So he confronted her yet again.
What do you mean by that, Vicky? I hope you're not involving me in some kind of stupid game by getting me to come for dinner.
Victoria looked confused.
What on earth do you mean by that, Harry?
Well, it's just that, he was put on the spot and didn't want to insult her if he was wrong. So he projected his views to her as though a third party had said them, which they actually had.
I have this friend who says that, I'll just say it, that you might be using me to get at your parents.
Vicky laughed, and it was a good laugh, so it seemed real.
Of course I'm not, Harold. I've told you before, I like you because you're different. Now stop being so silly.
But still, Harry had to be sure, so he pursued his line of questioning further.
Well, you have to admit it, Vicky. I'm probably not like your usual boyfriends, and I am a bit of a square peg in a round hole, round here. You're not a square peg, Harry, and if I get my way, you will be a regular visitor round here, you and your lovely family, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And with that, he was now nearly convinced. So there was nothing else to say except, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Vicky, but I had to be sure. And now you are sure, Harold. Am I? Oh, well, yes, I am."
Harry sat back and relaxed, but just a little, and then he returned to the matter in hand.
Do you mind if I ask you another personal question, Vicky?
Oh no, as long as it's not too personal.
Of course you may. Well, it might be a bit, but here goes anyway. Does your dad always drink that much?
No, laughed Vicky, seemingly unconcerned.
You have to understand that Daddy owns a very large company, and there's a lot of pressure on him, and Sunday is his only day off, and he sometimes finds it difficult to unwind.
The brandy seems to do the trick, added Harry.
Yes, it certainly helps Father. He calls it his special medicine.
Special medicine? I like that expression, Vicky. I wonder if it has the same effect as the special sweets.
Special sweets, Harry? What on earth are those?
Oh, nothing. Just something from a previous life. And Harry couldn't help grinning, because although he'd moved on to bigger and better things now, he still remembered the good times that the old gang had had when he was the same as them. Just a mere commoner. Mr. Simpkins poked his head around the corner. "Dinner's ready, you two," he announced. Harry jumped up and obediently joined the family in the dining room, and saw that it was lamb on the menu. How appropriate is that? What's that expression again? Like a lamb to the slaughter? Yeah, it's about right, that is. But then again, maybe not as it's turning out, thought Harry. They all sat at their regular places at the bottom end of the enormous oak dining table, except for Harry, who was ushered up to the very top where everyone could see him.
Bloody hell, I'm going to need a megaphone to talk to them,
he mused as he looked at the confusing array of cutlery that was laid out before him. He had a distinct feeling that he was being watched, so he had to get this bit right.
Now then,
Do you use them from the outside in, or is it the inside out? I don't know. But, as it transpired, the cutlery conundrum was a small hurdle to overcome. He just watched what the family did and copied them. It seemed being posh really wasn't that difficult after all, and so far he'd acquitted himself very well. In fact, much better than he could ever have imagined. Maybe he'd always been posh inside and he just didn't realise it. And so on it went into the afternoon. But the end was nigh, and he could sense a light at the end of the tunnel. And then, at last, it was time to bid their farewells. But Harry needed the little boy's room first, so he excused himself. He didn't really need to go. He just needed a time out to recompose himself before the grand finale of thank yous and niceties. Yes, a time out. That was a good idea. Or so he thought. And off he toddled, full of confidence and not nearly as meek as he had been. In fact, he fair skipped up the lushly carpeted steps and across the hall to the bathroom. He closed the door behind him, sat on the edge of the trendy avocado bath, and looked at himself in the mirror, and smiled and congratulated himself. You did it, mate. You smashed it to bits. And these people, they're all right. In fact, they're pretty much the same as me. We all have our problems. Even if we're well off, it don't mean that everything's perfect, because nobody's perfect. He smiled again and stood up and winked at himself with gratuitous self-satisfaction. But then he heard muffled voices. He looked around and noticed an air vent high up on the bathroom wall, and his curiosity got the better of him, so he climbed up onto the matching avocado sink for a better hearing vantage point. It was the unmistakable voice of Mrs. Simpkins. I shouldn't listen, he thought. I shouldn't, but I might. Just for a minute, because I know I created a good impression. So let's hear some of the good things that she has to say about me. Her voice was very stern, but that was nothing new. I see we had another duck egg for dinner, Victoria. Harry smiled for a second, until he realised that nobody had had duck eggs for dinner. Then he heard Victoria's voice. Duck egg? I don't think so, Mother. He's not a duck egg, more of a dodo egg. And that's precisely why he's here, in your house, eating your food, with his cheap pound stretcher trainers, under your table, Mother dear. The conversation was making no sense to Harry. His trainers were not from pound stretchers. They were off the market. So he listened further. I know exactly why he's here, Victoria dear. Because your father and I purchased a pony for Angelica, and we didn't purchase a horse for you. Why did that spoiled little prima donna get what she wanted, and I didn't? I need a new horse, Mother. Yes, but Angelica has her problems. You know what she gets like when she doesn't get her own way. Victoria spoke again, but this time in a tone that Harry did not recognise. Yes, well, if I don't get a horse, then you are looking at the next Mrs. Dodo Duck Egg. Get the picture, Mother? I knew it, Victoria. The only reason that scallywag is here is to blackmail me. I knew it all along. You didn't fool me for 1 second, young lady. Well, Mother, do I get the horse, or do you get the future son-in-law complete with his entire family over for Sunday lunch? Every Sunday lunch. Forever. Mrs. Simpkins fell silent. She was cornered, and Victoria knew it. She was a very intelligent young lady, but mix that with evil, and the outcome is devastating. So she continued to twist the knife further.
What is it to be then, Mother? An Arabian horse? A white one? Or the Beverly Hillbillies here for Sunday lunch? Every Sunday. What will the neighbours think? It's your choice, Mother.
Harry was stunned. This couldn't be happening. Victoria seemed to be so genuine. The whole situation must be some kind of ploy. It had to be. Suddenly, there was a huge crack, and he fell to the floor with a thud. A thick plume of dust filled his mouth and nostrils and stung his eyes. When the dust settled, he looked around. The avocado sink was gone, and all he was sat on was a pile of rubble. The dust was in his throat, his hair. His trousers had torn and they were damp with blood around the knees. But that didn't matter, because the only pain he could feel was in his chest, and it felt like he'd been poleaxed. His heart was broken, and he'd been used. Used in a game that he didn't even know the rules of. There was just one course of action left open to him, and it was staring him right in the face. The bathroom window. So battered, bruised, humiliated and heartbroken, Harry shuffled through the window. But unfortunately, he caught his trousers on the latch, and he fell around 8 feet into the bushes below, minus his trousers. When he crawled out, he met the Simpkins family dog. It was a mean-looking Yorkshire Terrier, and it barked furiously. But Harry wasn't taking any more nonsense from any Simpkins, so he barked back louder. The humiliation was at an end. There would be no more. And it actually worked, because the dog ran off.
Ha, ha, ha! And good riddance to you, Mr. Dog. And woof, woof, woof as well.
And he grinned, because now the tables were turning. But they hadn't quite turned yet, because when he looked up, there was the entire Simpkins family at the window watching him. Mrs. Simpkins was aghast, but Victoria just stood with a weird kind of half-smile on her face. Harry mused. I'm sat here in their garden. I've been lied to, used and abused, and most likely degraded. And what else? Oh yeah, my knees are bloody and I've got no trousers on. This whole situation isn't good. I think I shall now take my leave. So he climbed to his feet and leapt the fence into the neighbour's garden, where he found on the washing line a pair of girls' pink trousers. They were a bit tight on him, but he didn't care. They would do the job. And off he went, back to his previous life.